Darren, of course, is the regular guest on our show. He's read quite a bit and a lot more than I have, and I always like to have him on to keep me focused on what's important and what the foundational principles are that we could be and should be looking at when we start talking about current events and all the rest of it. Darren, welcome back.
Good morning, Jay. Thanks for having me on.
So tell us, what would you recommend that people read when they look at the world that's turning upside down and want to keep a sane head?
Well, that's a really great question, and there are a few things that I like to talk about more than the great books and the books that really matter, the ideas that really shape the world today. But you know, when we talked about this segment, I laughed because I thought, boy, it's that old adage that if you want me to talk 5 minutes about a subject, it'll take me 2 weeks to prepare. But if you want me to talk for an hour, I'm ready now. You know, you're kind of asking the question for it's kind of the old Vince Lombardi thing. You know, this is a football. Where do you start? And you know, from ground floor up. You know, I almost want to say from the get-go that the best place for people to start is perhaps not a book, but rather a documentary based on the book Commanding Heights. Go to YouTube. This is it's by PBS, surprisingly enough, but it is an amazing exploration of the Reagan-Thatcher years and how they used the ideas of the Austrian economists, the freedom economists, and really turned around what was a huge monetary debacle by Carter.
Yep. You know, Commanding Heights, I'm almost ashamed of myself. I completely forgot about that. As Darren and I were talking about this segment yesterday, that Commanding Heights didn't even come up. I watched Commanding Heights 2 years ago for the first time. I think it's a three-part documentary, maybe 3 hours. It integrates better than anything I have ever seen all of the say disciplines, philosophy, economics, history, together into a very understandable explanation of what's happened to America since 1913. It talks about how Russia and the Eastern Bloc went a very different way than America, based on simple economic, let's say, fallacies. And America went a different way, and we've had prosperity and peace, relative peace, compared to some of the other places. Wow. It is, now that's available to the libraries. Ann Arbor's library has several copies of it. I rented their library. I don't own the copy of it, but I've rented the DVD. What else? Tell us more about that documentary.
Well, I mean, that documentary begins with the story of what is really an ongoing battle between economic theorists, which is the battle between the Keynesians from John Maynard Keynes and the liberties economists that, back at that point really began with the Austrians. And so it starts with the story, interestingly enough, of how John Maynard Keynes and Friedrich von Hayek, the great Austrian economist, actually were sharing air warden duty on the roof of King's College. And it's just an amazing thing that to trace these two men's theories. And, of course, Keynes has been proven by history to be wrong. And I'd like to recommend another book that came out just a couple years ago. I'm always looking for books that are updated, that really have a modern and contemporary voice. And one book is Where Keynes Went Wrong by Hunter Lewis, and Why World Governments Keep Creating Inflation, Bubbles, and Busts. You know, another book is Milton Friedman, and he talks about it in his book, Money Mischief, that monetary theory is like a Japanese garden, and an apparent simplicity conceals a sophisticated, complex reality. And so, you know, a lot of these things are, it's not that they aren't simple, but rather they're not easy to really understand because they are so incredibly complex. But the real thing that one needs to understand is that a solid dollar means that our money isn't being leaked away from us through a hidden tax of inflation.
Yeah,
and when we see today what the government is doing, it is the same mistake that Carter made, which is they've turned on the printing presses, and they're essentially stealing. They're pulling the rug right out from underneath our dollar. And so, although people don't see their taxes go up, their spending power and their ability to take care of themselves, not to mention their retirement counts are slowly being leaked away.
What should we have less than a minute and a half? What's this? Go 1, 2. What should people do if they really need to understand more about? If they don't understand inflation and how it works, what should they be reading?
Well, if you really want to focus in on inflation, I would recommend the works by Friedman, Money, Mischief, and his outstanding book, which is really a staple of the conservative economist's mind, which is Milton Friedman's Capitalism and Freedom.
Yep.
Is an outstanding book. I've got to give a shout-out to Michigan's own Dave Bruhan, who wrote Spread the Wealth, which really talks about the crisis that we are about to reach today. But I also got to give a shout-out to Russell Kirk, who wrote a book for, in many ways, the homeschooler and that young introductory mind to economics, Work and Prosperity as well.
Yeah. Okay, Darren, we're going to have to close her out. David Bruhan, by the way, he is my broker. I have, he's a great guy. Wrote a great book. Is a real free market kind of guy. And we have 1 minute left. So we're going to pick all this up again in our next conversation. Darren, thanks for being with us.
You bet. Happy Father's Day, Jay.
Thank you. Now remember, this show is sponsored by Leo's Coney Island.